let me know how it goes. I'd be interested in it. Maybe if you could send in a more detailed thing about what you're doing weekly, I can do a better job answering in the future. Okay? Thank you. I like what it is. What we see here is, okay. Our next question is from Tom, and Tom does a good thing. I have, articles back, 3 decades. I have workshops, notes back in when I first started doing strength and throwing workshops back in the early 1980s. So sometimes, I can't believe I'm about to say this, that, what I said something 40 years ago, very often I still, that's a really good point, and then I have to remind myself about it. Some of the stuff doesn't date well. Like I remember I used to really, because of a book, Ken Cooper came out with a revised model of his book Aerobics, and he recommended vitamin C and vitamin E. And I remember being on a kick there for a while to make sure all my athletes took vitamins and C and E. And by the way, those are fine. But this is back when the free radical discussion, free radicals in your bloodstream, not in the Chicago 7 or anything. But there are some things I look back and go, I don't know about that. And most of the time, yeah, that's okay. So whenever you bring up something from the past, I have to rethink a few things. I know you suggest that we go out for a walk every day for 30 minutes or so. That's my suggestion, and that's probably the suggestion of most longevity people now, the importance of walking. Whether you read the Blue Zone stuff or Sinclair's work, or Tony Robbins has a book on life extension. Atia has one. My favorite is, my 2 favorites are Longo's Longevity Diet, Walter Longo's Longevity, and Gifford's Spring Chicken. They all get around the idea of walking daily. Here's my question. I saw an old T Nation article you did on inefficient exercise for fat loss. So my point has always been, and let me help out Tom with the point here. I think one of the keys to fat loss is exercise. Now, the new research is the exercise burn numbers are all probably well overstated, probably to double. And it's going to be a weird thing to try to explain, but some of the new research is saying that what we consider the calorie burn thing, I'm going to go out and I've got this little thing from a book that says, I burn 100 calories an hour doing this thing. So if I did that thing, I would burn a pound of fat in 35 hours. Well, now there's an argument that those numbers are largely overinflated, and the number more likely would be 70 hours of exercise. Well, okay, then, as many people are gonna, whenever I talk about diet and exercise, I get a whole bunch of comments that basically say it's all caloric restriction. And there's no question caloric restriction is true, but trust me, there's enough variations in the human body that some people, if they ate 2,500 calories a day of just simple sugar, you wouldn't want to, let's just say you wouldn't want to be in a room with them. Other people can thrive on keto. Other people can thrive on vegan. Other people could, it's weird what works for people. And I think a lot of our listeners would probably nod and go, yeah, that's true. When it comes to exercise, one of the issues is this. As you do exercises and you get better and better and better, the hit on your metabolism doesn't burn hotter. What do I mean by this? And I always use the example of my neighbor. He doesn't ride his bike anymore, but he used to have this bike, and he had an aerodynamic helmet, and he had aerodynamic gloves, and he had this high-tech bike. And he used to wear this white spandex suit, which men should probably not wear. But he also had a really big belly. And my thought was, when I watched him go by one time, and this is not a knock on my neighbor. I've actually talked to him about this, and he's okay with it. When I ride my bike is a cruiser. It's got 1 speed. It has coaster brakes. It weighs about 90 pounds. It's actually difficult to carry my bike up the flight of stairs in my back. It's heavy, okay? And it hits the guardrails as you go up. But if I ride my bike 100 miles and he rides his bike 100 miles, I'm going to burn a lot more calories, even if I'm in the best shape of my life, because if I come to a hill, if I come to your driveway, it's got that little bump like that, I got to get out of my bike and go, He could probably pedal 2 times and coast 30 miles on his bike. It is high tech. So the more efficient that his bike became, the less and less he had to burn. Make sense? So if you're a horrible swimmer, swimming is an outstanding way for you to burn calories. Also, there's something magical about being in a cold pool that burns even more calories. And if you've ever gone swimming at Salt Hill in Galway Bay, you know what cold is. It might be the coldest I've ever been in my life. But swimming in Salt Hill with my good friend Adrian Craddock, when you're going out there for 5, 6, 10 minutes, you're burning fat for the rest of the day because you're out there in the ocean, you're getting knocked around by the waves, and it's the water's coming off the Arctic. It sure feels like that. So if you're not a very good swimmer, when you do a length of a pool, you get to the other side and you're, as you get better and better and better, your stroke smooths out, you get the bilateral breathing going, you wear the high-tech clothes, you've got the glasses, you've got the fins, you've got the suit, as you get better and better and better, yes, you can go farther and farther, but you have to burn the same amount of calories versus when you were one step from drowning when you first learned. So a crappy bicycle probably makes you work harder than a good bicycle. Poor swimming technique makes you work harder. There's a show, I wasn't a huge fan of Friends, but there is an episode where Phoebe runs funny, and the other character, the Jennifer Aniston character, doesn't want to run with her. Well, the funny thing about the way Phoebe runs is probably for fat loss, she's probably doing the right thing. People and we still get, I'm a big fan of Leonard Schwartz's heavy hands. I'll tell you why people don't do heavy hands. You look like a lunatic when you do it. You're walking around my neighborhood, you got those 3-pound weights and you're pumping them as high as you can. It's a very inefficient way of getting around, but it's a much more efficient way of burning fat. He then asks, would it perhaps be better to alternate days of 30-minute walking with swimming, rowing, biking, or other cardio machines at the gym, similar to how you recommend varying the load carry exercise at the end of the workout? That way, we will never get too efficient at any of them. Tom, I really like that idea. They got that weird cross-country ski machine, and they got the rowing machine, and they got the bike that's got the thing like, where you use your hands, which is, by the way, Clarence Bass, his books are there. He's a real fan of that bike, the one, so you pedal and you use your arms at the same time. Sometimes he just uses his arms. Sometimes he just uses his right arm, left arm, right foot only, left foot only. You can do a lot of things to make it harder for you. Yeah, I like that idea. In fact, if you can handle it, I think it's genius. Now, when I go to a public gym, usually what I see people do is adjusting their music on their phone while walking at about 2 miles an hour or even less. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about you hopping on the exercise bike, and going for it. My caveat on this, Tom, is that I would worry that you would go a little too high with your heart rate. Do your best to try to manage. It'd be a real fun study for you, real simple one. But to have a heart rate monitor on, whatever kind, mine go in my ears. I also have one that goes around my chest, and just kind of. There's so many little programs you can do this with your phone now, but just get your phone as far away as you can, and then do the workout. And then before you even look at your heart rate numbers, give yourself a rate of perceived exertion for the workout. Maybe even a journal style, like, I went for half an hour. The first 10 minutes were really easy. I went too hard on, I felt crappy at 15. I got my momentum, I got things geared back up at, minute 20. At minute 25, I just started counting the seconds, and I couldn't wait to be done. Maybe on I think it's called an Aerodyne. Maybe on the Aerodyne, that's what you get. And on the rower, maybe you have felt great the entire time, and then look at your heart rates with what you perceive. It would be an interesting thing to see, because there are times when you do a heart rate thing that your perceived exertion is much higher than what's showing on the heart rate monitor. You might find that with, if you ever find yourself in a dangerous situation in water, your body might have been, in a panic mode, but your systems were running kind of smoothly. That's just an example from my own life. Okay, he then adds the important word, better. To follow up on this, the first thing is, let's just make sure we take a moment to think about the word better again, Tom. Is it better? All we have to do the test, the trials, and see. If you do 5 different cardiovascular exercises in a week and your joints feel great and you pop out of bed and everything's going great, and then it is better. Many people will find that if you just do one kind of longer, slower training, your joints will pick up the ouchies, depending on what you decide. There are issues with swimming. You need a pool. There are issues with cross-country skiing. You need snow, and where I live, you got to live where I live, and then you got to drive up till we can do cross-country skiing, because the snow melts too quickly here. One of the more interesting things that you didn't mention, and I mentioned heavy hands, but the other thing I want to mention, just kind of out, is I still think rollerblading is one of the most underappreciated gems in cardiovascular training, especially for the bigger lifter. Okay, now there's some issues, if you're worried about looking silly with heavy hands, some of the outfits we saw when rollerblading first came out, but you really should wear a helmet. I like those wrist guards that have the piece of metal here, so you can kind of, if you fall forward, you can skid. Whether you need elbow and knee pads is kind of up to you. When I used to do it on the Jordan River Parkway, and it was a long run, everything was pretty safe. I never had to worry about anything, because if something bad did happen, I almost always went forward. But I will be honest, those wooden bridges with the family with 600 kids at the bottom, they wouldn't move, trying to wiggle your way through, a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and 5-year-old going down a wooden bridge is pretty dangerous. Those were the times I wish I had elbow and knee pads. But yeah, rollerblading is amazing. I still think it's fairly low impact unless you fall. That's why you need all that extra gear. But yeah, a good question. And so just kind of keep a couple of things in mind for all of you who are listening about fat loss. We do need to strive for inefficient exercise. And that's why the thing I do whenever I go for a walk, I always wear a weight vest, because I used to weigh. So one of the things I try to do, I call it reverse rucking, is that as I lose weight, I try to keep the same amount of inefficiency in my walking. So if you put yourself on a program, you lose 40 pounds, I don't necessarily think you need to wear a 40-pound vest. But if you wore a 20-pound vest, you would still get some of the benefits you got when you weighed more. This is a whole question unto itself, and maybe I'll save it for another time. But so you still want to keep your cardiovascular work a bit inefficient. That's why on most of my walks after I lift, I do carry weights in my hands. I've got 2s, 3s, 5s, 8s, 10s, and then 25 if you really want to find out if you're tough or not. Go for a long walk, actually heavy-handing 25s. It's very difficult. 10s are brutal. So you want to keep inefficiency into your cardiovascular training. Now, obviously, you're competing. Ignore everything I just said. When it comes to the weight room, you want to be as efficient as you can. When it comes to the cardiovascular benefits, you want to be as inefficient as you can. I hope that helped. Tom, that's a fun question. And thanks for reminding me of that from back in the day. And I still like those old T Nation articles I wrote. So it's,